The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, thank you for joining today's webinar. Today's webinar's topic is how to find, manage, and secure data. We're going to talk about Index Engine's enterprise information management methodology and platform. My name is Jim McGann. I'm VP of Marketing here at Index Engines, and I will be your presenter today. If you do have questions, there's a question window on the side of your screen. Feel free to type the question in. I'll try to take them throughout the session. If not, I will take them at the end of the session or get back to you one-on-one depending on the question. Okay, so let's get started. Quick intro on Index Engines. We provide information management and archiving technology. So the unique features of our platform is that we provide intelligence across all classes of storage. We're really the only technology out there that can support not only primary storage, but also secondary storage, like backup images, backup tapes, and so on. So for our clients, they're really requiring information, knowledge, and management across all their user content and data, regardless of where it resides. The platform is designed to be an enterprise class solution, supports large-scale deployments. We have customers that are utilizing the technology to manage petabytes of data. It's very cost-effective, efficient, plug-and-play deployment, ability to find, manage, and report on all sorts of online and offline enterprise assets. We've been in business since 2004. It is patented technology. You know, the ability to understand complex formats is really a unique ability here, especially backup formats. We have partners and clients worldwide. The challenge in enterprise data, obviously, everybody on this call knows this, is that it's very complex. I mean, there's large volumes of user content across networks and servers that's locked away in proprietary repositories, which would be something like email, Exchange, Lotus Notes are proprietary environments, backup are proprietary environments, whether it be NetBackup, TSM, ArcServe, Commvault, whatever. Basically, the methodology that people have been using is to save everything. IT organizations really don't have the capability to delete content. They really don't know how to determine what's outlived its business value, what can legally and defensibly be remediated off the networks without getting in trouble by the legal teams or compliance teams and so on. But IT's been really focused on saving everything and making sure it's available. And in fact, not only saving everything, but there's multiple copies that are created through the IT process of disaster recovery, archiving, and so on that copies data over and over again, and really hasn't been focusing on purging any content. Users have power. Users can create content, store files, store any kind of content they want, including video and so on, throughout their network. They can also create PST email archives on their desktops, on file servers, and so on. So it's the fact that users really have a lot of freedom to create as much content as they want. And the fact that there's lack of knowledge of this data makes it incredibly difficult to manage. So what can be kept and what can be purged. So there's really no master directory, which is what we'll be talking about today. Some stats, which I'm sure everybody reads on a frequent basis. Gartner Group is saying that the rate of data growth is anywhere from 40 on to 60%, so it's significant out there. Also, I believe Gartner also is saying that through 2013, the business case for 95% of information management programs will depend on reducing IT costs and managing information risk. So what we see over and over again is the reason people or organizations are putting in information management platforms is to, yes, not only manage the risk and support legal and compliance, but also to manage and reduce IT costs. Because the next stat is even more shocking. This is from a great article that IBM wrote in this past summer, saying that by their estimates, 69% of information that most companies have stored has no business, legal, or regulatory value. So the fact that data is growing 40 to 60%, and you have other people saying that up to 70% of it has no value, you could basically get a free year of storage by just cleaning stuff up. How much is that worth to your organization? So really what organizations want to do is classify their data. So a lot of it may have no action, especially the stuff that was created recently. So it's the everyday working documents, the stuff with short-term business value. The other action would be archiving. So we deal with a lot of clients that want to archive data. So it's really finding intellectual property, finding content with really critical business value, finding stuff required for legal compliance, regulatory e-discovery requests, and making sure that it's preserved and held in the proper environment so that it can be found in the future, not just sitting out loose on corporate networks. The biggest piece here is remediating, purging what's not required. So finding what has no business value, classifying it as such, and getting rid of that content. So an example there is unmanaged ex-employee data. So, John Doe leaves the organization 5 years ago. All John Doe's files on their desktop or laptop could have been purged out as the laptop was recycled or the desktop was recycled. But data that's on the network that's owned by this user just sits there in languages on the network. So how do you determine what data exists that has no business value and what to do with it and how to clean it up? So we're going to talk about profiling data and how you do that. So, organizations have hundreds of thousands of servers, desktops, and so on. It's a very dynamic environment that changes constantly, massive volumes of data, very complex to understand. So the challenge really here has been that it's been difficult to figure out what's there. There's no understanding of what's sensitive, what needs to be kept. The profiling of data has been dependent on IT's knowledge, asking IT folks, what's on that server, who has access to that server, what type of data is on that server, is it finance, is it engineering, is it manufacturing? And as the data ages, it becomes more of a mystery. So as data, ages out, say 5, 10 years, it's very difficult to understand where it came from, what value it has, who owns it, and what should be done with it. So indexing is the key to profiling data. So without creating a metadata level index to understand, dates such as last access dates, modified dates, owners, locations, file types, and so on, you really can't make decisions about data. So indexing is really the core to any kind of data profiling or information management platform. So with index engines, we're fortunate to have two options here for indexing data. So on the online environment, we can crawl networks. So that's a common task, is to crawl through network data and to index it. So you would use your network infrastructure to scan all user files and emails and really create a rich metadata index of all that content. The key attributes here is that the indexing process must be high-speed and intelligent. You really want to be as non-evasive as possible across your networks. Your networks are already, overburdened, and you really don't want to create any bottlenecks on these networks to really, create any kind of interference for the users. So it's got to be a high-speed, intelligent process. It's got to be incrementally updated because that data changes continually to allow for continuous refresh, and it must be scalable and economical. The other option, which I'll talk about later, is working with backup. So we'll come back to that. But in terms of Octane for networks, Octane is the name of the index engine's platform here, and the network component to it is designed to really support enterprise-class deployments. It's incredibly high speed. It's the fastest indexing platform on the market. So when we say indexing, it's going to point to one of your filers or servers or even a desktop and be able to index that content. So there, there's a lot of different technologies out there that can index content, but when large volumes are important, and speed matters, you need to look at the throughput. So we're indexing at a terabyte per hour. So for your environments that have petabytes of data, we have clustered environments where you can deploy multiple nodes out there to handle this level of capacity. It's also very efficient. So with incremental updates, it's going to continually refresh itself and reduce the indexing bandwidth requirements. So, if you think about the incremental change of data on a daily basis is not massively significant compared to the volume that exists across the network. So incrementally, the Octane platform can keep up very quickly and very efficiently, and indexing can be scheduled at off hours. It's also intelligent so that you can schedule it at off hours. You can have it skip irrelevant or unnecessary files. So if, for example, your Oracle or SAP database, you really don't want to index that content, you could have it skip that data. Very scalable as well. It's a very small footprint, so you could have a single Octane appliance. It's actually a 2-use server, can support between 70 and 100 terabytes of data. So very efficient because the index footprint is very small, and very cost effective. So minimal support required. You basically plug it in and just let it work. and it's going to monitor your network and make sure things are up to date. So it's really the lowest cost per terabyte indexing platform out there on the market today. So the other option, as I mentioned, was leveraging the backup process. So this is an interesting idea that we've introduced, is that if you don't want to crawl through your network, so if you're in an organization that says, you know what, my networks are pretty overburdened, they're pretty taxed as it is, I don't want to create other resource strain on that network, you could look at the backup process. So that's already crawling your network. So what you're doing is you're backing up all your important data for disaster recovery purposes. It's already in place. It's already crawling networks to find all the new and updated information. So that crawl is already happening. So with Index Engines, one of the unique features of our platform is we have the ability to index backup images. So whether you're backing up to disk or backing up to tape, you can take those images and index them, and that's going to create a profile or a snapshot of what exists out on your network environment. It's really the best source of what exists. It's an offline indexing process, so it's not going to create any burden on your network, and it's an easy process to do. So leveraging the backup process is really a unique ability that you can go in here and connect to your tape environment, through a tape library, tape drive, or whatever, and connect to your tapes, your LTOs, DLTs, whatever format. And what's on these tapes really is a snapshot of your network environment. So, it's a unique, it's kind of a disruptive or an interesting approach, but we have customers that have required these data profiles across large volumes of data. And when you give them the options that we can put a box in your site, an appliance on your site, and crawl through your networks and index that content, or you can send us or work with us on your backup tape so we can index that content, and it's going to happen all offline and behind the scenes. And the nice thing about it is you can incrementally update it. So if you do an indexing of a backup from last month, obviously you're going to use tapes that are out of the DR rotation. You do a backup of tapes from last month, you can take the incremental update of those tapes, the next month, and update the index itself. So again, Octane has this unique ability to be able to understand backup formats. So if your tapes are in that backup, Commvault, TSM, ArcServe, Legato, regardless of the format, Octane understands that format, can get inside that backup container, index what exists in those tapes. And when I talk about tapes, I mean either physical tapes or backup images on something like a data domain box, for example. So it's direct indexing of those images. So when you scan the tape, you can create a rich metadata index of the content, figure out user profiles, what they own, where it is, server profiles, and so on, allow you to really do these reports. And I'll show you that in a quick demo of exactly what kind of reports and capability, query capability, that you would have on this, index content. So the direct indexing of backup formats, is proprietary technology that's only available here with the Octane platform. It's very efficient. So I think, whether you're going to be indexing your network data or backup tapes, it's going to really provide the same set, same resources and same reporting. It's just how you get the index accomplished, whether you're going to crawl your networks or just scan your, your offline backup tapes. So same results, just different ways to get from point A to point B. Is it practical to index backup tapes? So if you look at a full backup, the nice thing about it is it's readily available. So when it cycles out of your DR rotation, you're going to probably send it out to Iron Mountain or Recall or put it in offsite storage. You can really take it and leverage it for the rich content that exists on there, because you've got all your email content, all your file server content, and so on. It's offline process. If you look at an example of 500 terabytes of user data, so half a petabyte, if you're going to back it up onto LTO4 tapes that are running about 1.6 terabytes per tape, it could be as much as 300 tapes, for example. If you use a library, you can load the tapes up in a library. Automated indexing will scan through all those and manage the robotics of the library. You have parallel processing, so it'll process multiple tapes at the same time. The scan will take about 2 weeks. So, it's an offline process. Users won't even know what's happening. And then it can be incrementally updatable. So, is it practical? 2 weeks is not a lot of time. We also have a service here in our services lab that we have a secure lab here in New Jersey, which I'll talk about at the end, where customers send us their tapes, a full backup, and we could create these profile reports based on those tapes and do it as a service. So what you're going to get out is, the rich index of the data, which can be rolled up into the reports, which I'll show you in a few minutes. This is the kind of metadata that's created in the indexing process. So some of the really unique or interesting metadata fields are things like access time. So if you're trying to figure out in your networks, I want to find stuff that hasn't been accessed in 3, 4, 5, 7 years, whatever your threshold is, and I want to maybe even move it off to a cheaper storage. I want to move it off to a cloud storage. I want to just delete it and purge it altogether. That's a simple query. That's a simple report. You can get that with one click. I want to find owners. So who owns what? So maybe I want to point to a specific file server and says, who has the most data on the server? John Doe's taking up 30% of the server, and it's all video files, which seem to be personal files, which John Doe shouldn't really have on the network. So, you can find that out pretty quick. And some of the other things are like file types, file size, so on. If you do, what we're talking about really is more metadata-only indexing. If you do full content indexing, which is just a flip of a switch, you can get some document signatures, which can be used for deduplication purposes. So that could tell you really how much redundant or duplicate data exists on your network and so on. So lots of different, the nice thing about this is once you have the index, you can look at it any way you want and query it and ask it questions to get back answers in order to make decisions about streamlining your data. One of the other common ones I'll talk about is finding things like PSTs or PDFs or sensitive Excel spreadsheets or things like that. There's output as well from the Octane appliance. You can go in there and create a query, and you can get a listing. So the nice thing about this listing is going to be a CSV text file. Is you can extract things like locations of files. So this is kind of about email, but if you had 1,000 or 10,000 files that you wanted to delete, you would have the full location of those files that you could use simple scripts to delete that content as well. The index is dynamic as well, so it's a web-based GUI, which I'll show you in a minute. So you can perform iterative queries on the content, ask specific questions like, profile the types of data on a specific server. So I can go into a server and say, what types of data there, what users have data there, what's the age of the data. Or you can profile by user, say, listen, I want to know what John Doe owns on the network. Where's the location of all John Doe's data? So a lot of times, if you're doing maybe a legal discovery request, for example, finding, stuff, the proverbial needle in the haystack, you can just go here to this profile and say, hey, where's all John Doe's email? Hey, it's on these servers. Now I know where to go to get this stuff. It reduces the pain and the time in finding stuff significantly. Date range, when was stuff modified? Keywords. So if you're going to do a full content indexing, which is definitely an option, traditionally for data profiling we do metadata only index, but you can, a simple flip of the switch is going to give you full content. You could do keyword search. So you could do, keywords for sensitive intellectual property or content or so on. So here's an example of user-based profiling. So say you have, 5 users you're interested in the finance department. You could import a list of custodians. And the nice thing about importing a list of custodians or users is, if you've got a whole bunch of ex-employees that are not with the organization anymore, you want to figure out where their data is. So you want to do a little bit of cleanup every 6 months or so. You can import that in, generate a list of location reports. So it's going to say, for these 5 users, their data is scattered about the network on server X and server Y, which we know about, and the email server, obviously, but also on legacy backup tapes. So because it's backed up on a regular basis. And then you can start profiling the data. It's like what type of data they have. What's the age of the data? When was the last modified? As stuff ages out throughout your networks, it typically just kind of goes back into the ether and just never to be seen again. And that stuff, the statistics all over the place about what it costs to maintain a terabyte of storage or buy a terabyte of storage. But buying it is one thing. Managing it and maintaining it, keeping it powered, keeping it is significantly higher than anybody thinks. So the fact is that it's, as the stat I showed you earlier, that almost 70% of your stuff that you're saving here that's aged on your network is useless and has no business value. You really could recoup significant capacity in your storage infrastructure. You can look at email exchange, who they're sending emails between. Any hidden data, so there's the concept of hidden data, which is like PSTs that are sent on remote desktops. There's also talk of dark data, which is stuff that's not leveraged. You can find that kind of content. Where's the shared duplicate content? So, when you're in an IT organization, the biggest mystery in life is I have no idea what I'm storing on these servers or what these users are keeping out there. This will really lift the veil on that mystery and allow you to make decisions about it. So the reports I'll show you real time here. They're dynamic. You can drill down. So again, you could go into a specific user. So I can say, hey, what's John Doe? What data does John Doe own across the network? Hey, I can find out where they've stored spreadsheets because we have some kind of investigation going on in spreadsheets here related to John Doe. Find other users who stored spreadsheets on that server. So maybe who was John Doe sharing this stuff with, and when was it accessed in the last 90 days? What spreadsheets were accessed in the last 90 days? So that's a very specific use case, but you can get the idea of how the dynamic capability, the dynamic actionable reports work. All reports can be downloaded. Some of the sample reports are like last access time, file types. So if you're looking for PSTs, that would be your report. Hosts, so you can drill down to a host and say, hey, what's on that server? Who has files there? Modified times, owner, size, duplicates, and so on. Okay, so let me jump over and go into a quick demo of the product. Okay, this is the user interface. So I'm going to go fairly quick through this. Again, if you want more details on this, we're happy to do detailed one-on-one demos. But if I log in here as a search user, there's different logins, but this is a standard generic search login to the system. So to give you a quick tour around here, on the left there's different query filters. There's also a location filter. So as you index content, so if you index a bunch of backup tapes that are backups of different servers, you would see those servers listed here. If you crawl through networks, desktops, email servers, Exchange nodes, things like that, you would see those listed here as well. So this is automatically generated based on your environment. The filters are, content, which is available if you do deep indexing. If you do metadata only, it's not available. But for metadata, you got your file properties, document properties, email properties, and so on. So a bunch of preferences here, but I'm just going to go hit a blank search and jump into the Reports tab. And so what the there we go. So what the search is going to query, and I think here I've got a couple million files, emails, just all sorts of stuff. And this is demo data, so it's not really representative of a typical corporate network, but it's really designed to give you an idea. But it's generating right now a whole bunch of canned reports, and these canned reports are really going to be the foundation of your data profiling, and that's really your starting point. So for a lot of organizations that we work with, they have no clue what's on a server, and it could be 10 terabytes, it could be hundreds of terabytes, and again, we've processed environments that are in the petabytes. Index that content, and your first stop here is really these reports, and it's taking a little bit because it's generating a bunch of them. I have them all turned on right now. Some of them you may not really require. It's going to present it here. But these reports will give you instant knowledge of what kind of stuff exists out there, who owns it, and age of it, and so on. Okay, a few more seconds. Okay, so the report, okay, so here's the first one. So we do a lot of demonstrations and so on this demo server around email. So this one here is showing that about 89% of all the files out there by count are email. And you can also see the size of it. It's about 11 gigs of email. But you can get an idea. So I can say, hey, look, these are all the different file types that exist out here. What I'm interested in, maybe I have some sensitivity around PSTs. So a lot of organizations just worry about users creating PSTs out of the network and not really knowing where they are because they're kind of unmanaged email archives. So I can go here and uncheck this stuff and just check the PSTs. And hit search on that, and that's just going to filter it down to the PSTs. So there's about 47,000 PSTs in the network, about 1.5 gig of PSTs. So the nice thing about these reports is I can drop down and say, okay, let's look at the owner report. Who owns these PSTs? So here I have an example of different owners. You can see our development team or our lab kind of have some fun with some celebrity names here. I guess Anne Hathaway and Kate Hudson are pretty bad culprits here. But there's others. So what I have here is an example of a SID. So we can integrate into your Active Directory environment, which will resolve all these permissionings as well. So in this case, this one wasn't. But if you do, you'll see these will be resolved with specific usernames. So you can go in here and drill down even further and say, listen, you know what? You know, Kate Hudson and Anne Hathaway and this Sager person are people that I'm having some issues with, so I want to find PSTs. So I can search on that, and then I can go into another report and basically say, you know, what locations. This is going to tell me, actually not locations, I'm sorry, hosts. What hosts? So this is going to tell me which servers those are located on. So in this case, about 8,000 PSTs are located on this server here. You can see the IP address. I could also download a CSV report that will give me very detailed information about where that stuff exists. I can also even go into my results tab here, and this is going to show you the specifics of it. So this is going to show you the PSTs that exist out there and where they're specifically located. So what I'm trying to really explain to you is the dynamic capability of this interface. So the example of finding PSTs. If I want to go in there and actually let me clear this out, and let me show you another sample of going into a specific location. So possibly I have maybe these 3 servers, and I can drill down in the server and go down to specific levels of you know, folders and directories. So maybe I select these 3 servers, don't know what's on here, but I want to search on that content. Okay, so what I'm interested in is like what kind of files are on these 3 servers. So right now it's generating a report of all the stuff on there. It's generating a bunch of CAN reports, about 15 or 20 CAN reports of what exists on those servers. And again, for the metadata, I mean, I can go in and do these queries as well. I can do specific date ranges. You know, if I go into these filters, I can go by document or file properties like you know, file name or last access time. I'll show you that in a minute, saying I want to find stuff that hasn't been accessed since, you know, the year 2000, for example. So you can go very specific into these, or you can just stay with the reports and go you know, go very general. But in this case, I'm doing some location filtering. Okay, these reports, it does generate a bunch of CAN reports, so that's why it takes a little bit. But it's going to throw it up here now. And again, all this stuff is exportable too, so you can get full listings and detailed listings of all this content, the location, and so on. And as far as the actions, like to take action on this content, so really with the index engine's Octane platform, you can do a couple things. You can make a copy of the data, move it out to a file server. So if you want to move data out to a server, you can do that. You can extract it into an Octane archive. So there's an archive platform for long-term preservation. So if it's stuff you want to know where it is and you want to keep it for future reference, you can do that into the archive that exists. Or if you just want to extract it out to disk, you can do that. If you want to delete it off your network or encrypt it or do any other action, you can take the listing of specific location detail and use simple scripts to do that. Okay, so here I see for these 3 servers, obviously if I do my host report, it's these 3 servers, but I can get nice capacity on here, the types, the size of the data on these servers and the volume of content. But I could ask the question, who owns data on those servers? So I just flip it over to this report, and I see a full list, and I basically 97% of the data is owned by, again, here's a SID that hasn't been resolved because I'm not connected to Active Directory at the moment, but 97% of it is that one user, so that's interesting there. But what kind of data is there? So I can go into file types. So if you're interested in finding, for example, video files, image files, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoints, and things like that, you could do that through this report. Or if you just want to go in here and just do a filter, so if I go into a filter and I say, you know, file properties, I can go in here and say what I'm interested in is file types. And if I go in here to things like video, for example, so here's all the different video formats, I can just select that. And now what it's going to do is it's going to filter it down just to videos. And you can see there's, in this case, there's only 18 videos, which happen to be Flash videos that exist out there. And I can switch over and find out specifically who owns those Flash videos. So again, it's that owner. So you get the idea. They're very iterative. You can go back and forth and be able to run these queries, ask questions to the system, get high-level profiles, and do what you need to do. So, okay, again, I'm going to go back and do a report. Again, this report is against all the data, which is about 5 million or so objects. So, I mean, I'll show you some of the other reports. I mean, I think the age report is pretty interesting for people out there. I mean, it's very commonly used, whereas you want to start doing some typical cleanup out there. On anything that hasn't been accessed in 5 years or even 3 years, I want to move it out to a different location, which you can do. Or you want to copy it or delete it, which you can do as well. So things like that. A lot of common use cases is definitely cleanup. And most of it is really based on access times or modified times or even uploading a list of owners. So if you were doing that by file properties, you can go in here to the, actually document properties, excuse me. You can go into document properties and you could upload by author, which is the owner of the document. And you can import that list as well. So there's a way to import it into the interface. So you can say I've got 1,000 owners that I want to see that are ex-employees. I want to see what's going on with their data and what they own out there. So here I just here showing this is the owner report. So it's going to show you by file count or by size, who owns what. Let me go into the age report. So last access time. So here you see, again, a lot of this stuff is test data. So actually I'm on a server that has a lot of test data. So it's listed as unknown, but let me go 3 to 4 years ago and run a search on that. So you can go, or you can go 4 or greater years ago. So now I've limited it down to that, and now I want to go into my owners and say, these are the people that own that data. Let me see what type of data it is. So most of that stuff, 56% of it is Word docs, kind of thing. So so you can see that, and this is all stuff I'm looking at as stuff that hasn't been accessed in like 3 to 4 years. So you can make some decisions about it. This is stuff that typically wouldn't have any business value and stuff that can be typically purged off the network. And then you can get locations. And here, keep going to the wrong report, or I can go host. Typically here with the locations, then you want to get detailed listing. And so what I can do is I can go in and of the results, you can see all the results here. What I can do is select all of them, and I can download this CSV, which I showed you in the slide presentation. And what the CSV is going to give you a, basically a text file that's going to show you all the specific locations. And that's something that you can use a simple script to go out there and say, hey, delete all this stuff. I just happen to do a very large result, so it's taking a little bit. But I'll open it up here in Excel, and you can basically see how that works. Here we go. Okay, this is tens of thousands of files. So, okay, so you can see here in the path. So you've got the detailed path information and the detailed file name information. So using the path and the file name, you can use a simple script to just go out there and say, hey, delete all this stuff, or encrypt all this stuff, or whatever you'd like to do. Okay, so that's the demo for today. Let me go back. Okay, so beyond data profiling, which is what we just were talking about, a full index is going to give you of your enterprise data is really an asset. You can leverage it to do lots of stuff. So if you're just out there and interested in cleaning up your networks, that's a good thing. You're going to recoup a lot of your storage investment and capacity. But this will also allow you to respond to legal requests instantly, so you can figure out where stuff is. I know a lot of our customers struggle with identifying and collecting data to support a legal hold or preservation request. You can perform early case assessments against the data. So if you do have a pending lawsuit, your legal or your compliance teams could quickly search and look in there and figure out, hey, what's our exposure here? Defensible deletion is a process that we work with a lot of our clients on in order to clean up stuff. So you can't really go in there and randomly delete stuff. You have to kind of coordinate with your policy teams and compliance teams to do it defensibly. So beyond just profiling the data, these kind of activities have been really popular among our customer base. And the fact that you create this data map, as we want to call it here, or data profile, but the fact that it's actionable makes it all that much more useful for the organization. So the value in it is that you can really answer a lot of questions today and in the future. So here's an example, and some of you use the query interface, so you can see how this typically works. Is if you've got a current litigation and your compliance teams needs to find all email conversations between John Doe and Sue Clark from June 2008 to January 2009. So you can run that in there as a query and say, where are John Doe's and Sue Clark's email? The data map will tell you that it's on the Active Exchange server, but it's also on backup tapes, and it's also on desktop PSTs. We've had many customers that have gone and collected data off their Active Exchange server only to find that there was hidden email on desktop PSTs they didn't know about where the smoking gun was contained, and they were forced to produce that well into a really large lawsuit, which no legal teams or CEOs like to get those surprises at the 11th hour. So using a data map, you'll know exactly where stuff is. You can find the specific content, the date range. You can go in there and get it off the old legacy tapes and extract that data out and hold it into an archive for legal review. That process becomes very easy. Defensible deletion, we're working with many organizations right now to go and clean up legacy data. And if you think about it, you probably have data that's 20 plus, decades, years old sitting out there on file systems. So cleaning up that stuff, and if you listen to IBM saying that about 70% of that stuff has no business or legal value, which is easy to make the decision about deleting it, but it could contain liability. So it could contain hidden smoking guns that could pop its head or rear its ugly head at any time. So finding that stuff and cleaning it proactively before any kind of sensitive litigation could occur, which is definitely a legal process, is definitely best practices that we're seeing. So not only recouping the storage and the deletion process, but defensively cleaning up and managing that long-term risk and liability. And one of the common things that we see over and over again, common requests we get in this process, is purging ex-employee files. So as your employees pass through the company and leave the organization, their data sits there and lives forever. And unless you go out there and manually get rid of it, it's never going to go away. Early data assessment, figuring out if there's a certain situation like a harassment lawsuit between two employees, your legal teams can actually use the interface that I showed you, and there's many legal organizations that do that, to query into the data environment and ask questions. What was the email exchange between these folks? Put in some sensitive keywords, sensitive language keywords, see what the results are, and you can review the relevant email in order to determine what your positioning is in this scenario, so early data assessment. So, we're wrapping up here. So the advantages of data profiling is really better insight into your corporate record. So the issue of IT organizations just kind of being, deaf, dumb, and blind about their storage is really no longer the case. You really don't want to live life like that because it's going to come back and haunt you. And it's also, if you're still paying, those big storage vendors millions and millions of dollars every year to increase your storage capacity, that's really wasted money. It's really wasted money that could be used for better purposes. So better insight into storage to streamline your capacity, get rid of unnecessary data, recoup capacity, improve your support for legal and compliance, and just really find and manage data more effectively. It's really the next generation data center that we're seeing today. A few of our customers, we have customers worldwide, some global organizations, some local organizations, a lot in manufacturing, financial services, pharmaceutical, energy, natural gas, government agencies as well. We also have quite a few service partners worldwide like IBM, Deloitte, KPMG, PwC that are leveraging our technology at their clients as well. We do have a great white paper. I actually wrote it, so I know it's good. But it's a great white paper on data mapping, so how to use data mapping to reclaim storage and manage liability. My email address is there. If you send me an email, I will shoot that out to you as soon as possible so you could take a read through that. Also, we have an offer that if you're interested in seeing how this works, I think the easiest way for you guys to leverage the technology and see the value of it is if you have some recent backup tapes, and we can sign NDAs. We have a secure facility. We do legal litigation processing of data 24/7 here. So it's a secure environment. But if you can get up to maybe 10 recent full backup tapes, if you have more backup tapes, we can discuss that. But a full backup that's out of disaster recovery that IT is not using any longer, you can send it to our secure facility. We'll index them. We'll create a full data profile and a full report that we'll print out, and we'll present it to you and deliver as a deliverable to you. It's only $250 a tape, so if you have 10 tapes, $2,500, pretty cheap. And we will give you this report, and the reports I showed you earlier, what we'll do is we'll summarize that in a PDF document and get that to you and show you, you know, how much duplicate exists, what type, who owns what data, what types of data exist, and so on. And if required, we can even keep the index online and allow you to go in there and kind of do iterative queries on the content as well. So nice offer here to be able to get, you know, stick your foot in the water and see how this works. And if you have servers out there that you have no clue what's on them, or even an email server you really want to get a profile on, you can just do a backup of those servers and send those specific tapes to us, and we can process it. So $250 a tape, nice offer. Okay, so we're pretty much wrapped up here. Okay, so I don't know if we have any time for questions, actually. Let me see if we do. Yeah, I see there are some questions in here. What I'll do is I'll answer them one-on-one. Okay, one of them I can see quick. It's pretty easy. I mean, do you support data domain storage? It says OST storage. I'm not sure what you mean by OST. But yes, we do support data domains. We do that pretty frequently. We can index. We're actually doing a project now where we're indexing about half a petabyte of data domain storage and cleaning that up significantly with the customers actually doing that. So yes, we do support data domain storage. So really anything you can that's in backup images and so on, we can index, whether it be on tape or disk. And as far as network stuff, anything that we, you know, NFS or CIF shares or network shares, we can crawl through. So, okay, I'm told we're at the end of our 45 minutes, so we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for your time. Again, if you want a copy of that slide deck, again, my email address is there on the screen. Shoot me an email, and I will get that out to you this afternoon. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.